Today's guest is Robyn Crane, and we're going to go deep into money mindsets and taking massive action. Welcome to Richer Soul, your journey to a more purposeful, intentional, amazing life. Where are you going to go and how are you going to get there? Let's figure that out together. At the core is the financial well-being to be able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. It's about personal freedom and abundance. Please check out the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Richer Soul. That's where I share interesting articles that I have read this week. Also, if you get a chance, stop by the website, richersoul.com. You can sign up for my email list. I promise not to spam you. I send emails out extremely rarely. It's just more that if something comes up or I've got something that I want to share with the audience, it's the best way to find out. So, are you creating the life you deserve? That's the question you need to answer. My goal is to help you figure out how your puzzle pieces come together to design a great life. That means we have to understand where we're going. In other words, what's our purpose? We also need to be able to be healthy enough to be able to do what we want, have the time to be able to do so. We need the financial resources to fund the life we choose to live. And let's face it, living life alone gets kind of lonely. So creating strong relationships and being part of something bigger spiritually. While we all know this, we're yet stuck listening to the voices in our head that creates fear and holds us back from the life we deserve. And today, we're going to talk to Robyn about a lot of that. If you've not listened to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the balance in your life. Before we meet Robyn, I want to share something from the FIRE movement. What is FIRE? It's FI, financially independent, RE, retire early. And there are a ton of people in this movement, and they retire early, some in their 20s, some in their 30s. The way they do it is by being extremely frugal and cheap a lot of the time. And we're going to learn today about cheap check. Retire early means that you no longer have to do work you don't want to. It doesn't mean you sit on the beach all day drinking Mai Tais. We must have a life of purpose that's intentional in what we want to do. Today's guest is Robyn Crane, and she's going to talk a little bit on the subject of money mindsets. Robyn Crane is a money and business growth expert. She's known for hosting the TV show The Financial G-Spot, radio show Let's Talk Money, and is a 4-time #1 best-selling author. In her brand new book, Make More Money, Help More People, Robyn shares empowering stories of women entrepreneurs in her Femme Mentorship group who have doubled or tripled their income. She also reveals the unknown success strategies that helped her go from making $500 a year to over $500,000 a year in her coaching business in just 2 years. Her blueprint for financial and relationship success has been featured on ABC, The Motley Fool, Fox Business News. Now, let's meet this amazing guest, Robyn. Welcome to Richer Soul, Robyn. It's great to have you join us today to talk about money and mindsets.
Thank you. It's awesome to be here, Rocky.
Let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
A lot, everything. I mean, I think everything is actually taught between the ages of 3 and 5, sometimes even earlier. So really you're learning from very early stages of development how to think about money, what to believe about money. It's just not taught to you like it is in school. They don't give you a notebook and say, this is how money works. You learn through other people's beliefs. So depending on who you spend time with is really where you learn those. I remember growing up, and my parents were very much, we were middle class, at some stage middle class to upper class. I learned that money doesn't grow on trees. Even though we had enough of it, plenty of it, it was always you spend money on what you need, not what you necessarily want. And there are certain things that are priorities. Like we spent money on going on family vacations and spent money on really family type of stuff. I mean, like having a nice home, that sort of thing, but nothing over the top. It was very much like, and I guess that's all relative to what you believe, but I have these money types, and we can definitely talk about these money types, but one of the money types is called Cheap Chip, and Cheap Chip likes to hoard money, likes to save money, doesn't like to spend money, and is much more frugal or cheap about the way that he or she chooses to make decisions when it comes to spending money. And I grew up as a cheap chip, and not wanting, even as a kid, like wanting to keep my pennies and hoard that money and not really wanting to spend it. And if I did want to spend it, it would be on only things that I valued. And that was just directly instilled from my parents because that's how they were. They spent money on, like I said, what they valued, but they absolutely looked at every single penny, and every dollar had a purpose. And if we went out to Chinese food, which we did most Fridays actually, went to this place called the Mayflower, my dad would say, don't order soda. And it wasn't because it wasn't healthy, but it was because he thought it was ridiculous to order dollar soda back then when you can get a 6-pack for $3.50. Like, it just didn't make sense. That was really the logic behind it. And that's how I always was. I really learned that it's all about value. It's about choices and value and saving a buck.
I grew up much the same way, but the reality is, compared to most people, we're outliers. That's not normally how people behave and teach their kids about money. Or have you found different?
It's really interesting because, so I taught something called money parenting, and this is actually really relevant because it was about 8 years or so, but I started in financial planning. Before that, I was a singer-songwriter, so it was a very odd transition. But I went into becoming a financial advisor, and what compelled me into that was actually not anything about money, because I had these, I would say, misconceptions and negative associations to financial planning or being a financial advisor, because I thought it was greedy. Because I also had, not only did I want to save a buck and hoard money and not like to spend and all that, but I also had these negative associations with being wealthy. Like, it's like, yes, you want to have money, but not too much money, like as if there's something wrong with it. And I don't know where that came from. I don't remember that being taught to me. But again, like, nothing's really taught intentionally. It's just taught really through people's beliefs, those who you spend time with. So anyway, as I became a financial advisor and I thought I was helping them, I ended up actually doing this talk one day where I got to speak at my friend's daughter's preschool. And I was very excited because they wanted me to come in and speak about college funding. And I went in there to speak about college funding, and I didn't do that well, but I didn't do that poorly either. And I lucked out because there were about 40 parents in the audience. And I ended up sitting down with about 10 of them. Those 10 parents really became my research and development, where I was able to understand the real problems. And what I understood is that the problems I thought they had, which I thought were, how do I invest? How do I get my kids paid, their college paid for? And how do I pick like which vehicle to use? And all the things that they said were their problems, not understanding how to do that, were actually just surface problems. And the real problems were the deep problems, which were, how do we communicate about money? How do we make sure to raise financially responsible kids? Like, how do we do allowance? And even the allowance question wasn't because they really want to do allowance. It was because there's a fear that they were going to raise kids who were just entitled and didn't really know how to manage their money. And so I created something called money parenting, which is how to raise financially responsible kids by leading by example. Because what happens is, no matter whether you pay for college or not, it's actually irrelevant to what your kid's financial future is going to look like and whether or not they have a secure financial future. What's relevant are your beliefs and your behaviors when it comes to money. And that's like could be a direct imprint on your children, or directly the opposite. And that's what I would teach with money parenting. So when you're asking these questions about me, it's the same thing. I wasn't taught and sat down. I used to do this at my seminars when I was teaching about money parenting. I'd get on the whiteboard there, or the flip chart, and I'd say, this is how I read a menu. And on the right side, I just write down numbers, and it would be like 12, 15, 18, 7 or something. And I would look at a menu from the right side and decide, what do I want to eat based on the price? And I would consider, okay, do I want to spend an extra $3 to get the salmon with the salad? Because that was what would go through my head. And I literally would make those decisions based on the price, but also consider them the value, but I would backtrack it. It wasn't that my dad who was more of a little bit more of a cheap chip than my mom, he didn't sit me down and say, Robyn, this is how you read a menu. You start at the right side, you start with the price, and then based on the price, you decide what you want for dinner. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's just that he was like that. He was always considering price. And so that's what was instilled on me. So I think everybody grows up differently. I think this is a world of spending for sure, that we're in a world of entitlement, and especially, in the United States, at least with my experience, where people feel like they're born and they should just get to spend whatever they want to spend. And credit cards are so ubiquitous that it's like we can get money whenever we want it, basically, which is a really weird concept to think about. And so I do think there are definitely a lot of people who fall into that trap of spending, whatever you want, you get, and you don't have to make the money first. But that's definitely not how I grew up. And I think it really has to do with those who are raising you and who are influencing you, whether it's your parents, your grandma, your teachers, your next door neighbor who may be the wealthiest person in the world, who might influence you to shift that. But it absolutely is happening unconsciously or subconsciously, not at a conscious level. And I think it just really depends on your parents' upbringing and how they brought you up, which is why I focused on this money parenting idea, to be conscious about it, right? That if you want to actually raise financially responsible kids, then you can be intentional about it and shift your beliefs and behaviors so that it helps them in a positive way, as opposed to just defaulting to whether or not it's going to be exactly like you or they're going to be exactly the opposite of you. Because sometimes if you have wealthy people, the kids see that as bad or you have completely broke people and the kids see that as bad and they have a negative association with it. So they do the exact opposite, which could be good or bad depending on what the situation is. So did I answer your question, Rocky?
I think so. Absolutely. So you're talking a little bit about money mindsets. You named one, which was it Cheap Chip, right?
Yes. The money
what are
types.
the other money mindsets that are out there?
Yeah, I call them the 5 money types. So I have 5. And actually, I can even give away the money type quiz. Just remind me, I can give it to you when you're ready. But your audience, those of you listening now, can go take this money type quiz and find out what your money types are. We have all 5 of them. I'll go over them in a sec. But we have all 5 of them. It's just in what order do we have them? And to what degree does it kind of influence our lives, right? And how does it help us and how does it hurt us? Because every single one of these money types has positive and negative characteristics. And once you're conscious of these characteristics and these attributes, you can actually be more intentional with how you, kind of which you choose to step into. So the first one, as I mentioned, Cheap Chip, not necessarily in this order. And it's not gender specific. It's kind of a funny story. I was thinking of these money types and trying to figure out a way to teach it in a fun way. And I had this was years ago, where I had this online video training that I was teaching through a company called Entheos, which they do online trainings. And so I had to come up with this half-hour 10-tip thing. And I came up with these money types. I was racking my brain. At first they were animals and it was really weird and hard to understand and it didn't work at all. And then, I don't know, somehow I saw these Barbies in my daughter's room that were speaking to me. And they said, hey, we're the money types. I don't know. It wasn't exactly that weird, but somehow I thought it would be fun to teach that way. So actually the first one I usually teach, let me go backwards, is Spendthrift Sally. And since this is an audio podcast, you can picture Barbie, because Barbie is representing Spendthrift Sally. Now, Spendthrift Sally loves to spend. She actually feels good when she spends money. She oftentimes will go and spend money because maybe to fill an emotional void. It's actually maybe she feels depressed, maybe she feels sad, maybe she just got dumped, something like that. And she wants to go shopping because it makes her feel so good. And Spendthrift Sally, she will be compulsive or impulsive when it comes to spending. Now, if you're like me, Rocky, and you're a cheap chip, you're probably thinking, no, that's not me. Is that is that you, Rocky?
Absolutely. That is not me.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So typically, like, you do have people who are sometimes are cheap chip with Spendthrift Sally very close, and they have some, characteristics of both. And we all have characteristics of all of these. But if you're far, cheap chip, and you're like, Spendthrift loves to spend, like, I don't get it, right? So Spendthrift Sally loves to spend money. The challenge with Spendthrift Sally is that sometimes, because she's so impulsive and compulsive, that sometimes she overspends. So this could come up for you if you're a Spendthrift Sally, where you don't think of the consequences. You don't think about what's going to happen if I buy that dress or spend $1,000 on clothes today or whatever it is. You're not necessarily considering those consequences. And if you don't have the money, right, you could go far into debt. Now, sometimes Spendthrift Sally, like in business, I work with a lot of female entrepreneurs, and I notice how these money types affect your business as well, and how it can actually sabotage your business success, or it could actually help you. There's always a way it does both, but that's what we want to look at, because if you're not where you want to be, whether it's in business or financially, then these money types will actually give you a clue as to why. Because what you will notice with these money types is that you're really looking at beliefs and behaviors. So you can look at, well, what does Spendthrift Sally believe? Well, she believes in abundance. She believes that she can always have more money. And so oftentimes she'll just spend thinking, oh, it'll all work out. It'll all work out. And so that's, she often justifies these purchases because telling herself, sometimes lies and sometimes is positive, but telling herself that, she can always make more money. Now in business, sometimes that helps. And sometimes you're really great at sales, because you just assume the person on the other end of the table that you're having a sales conversation with is just going to buy, because why wouldn't they? Because you would, because if you want it, you buy it now. I always say this at my seminar. It's like, when do you buy? When does Spendthrift Sally buy? She buys now. She buys when she wants it. So that's Spendthrift Sally, represented by Barbie, who wears a lot of bling. The second one is Cheap Chip, and Cheap Chip is represented by Ken. And in my trainings, I have him wearing a shirt that's too small for him, because he's too cheap to go shopping and buy more clothes, because why would he? Because it's good enough. But he does not like to spend. He likes to save his money. I mean, definitely there's usually a stash somewhere of cash or something where you can, because he's more scarcity minded versus Spendthrift Sally, who's more abundance minded. So Cheap Chip doesn't like to spend. He is typically a really good saver. And like I said, I'm a cheap chip, so I'm a woman, but like I said, the gender doesn't really matter. It's just for fun, because these were the dolls that I had available to me. So Cheap Chip, the good thing about Cheap Chip is that he typically is a good saver. He does make slow decisions usually. So he's the type of guy that's going to research everything, wants to save a buck, wants to get the best deal, and is willing to spend time and resources to do that sometimes in order to save money. Whereas Spendthrift Sally, it's like, it doesn't make sense to spend the time, like, just pay the money. Like, who's got time? Like, let's just do it and get it over with and have it right now. So the challenge with Cheap Chip when it comes to life and money is that sometimes he doesn't make a lot of money because, he's really more scarcity minded. And that held me back for a very long time when I first became a financial advisor. And I thought I wanted to save, but because I was so concerned about spending money and investing money and money I didn't have, I didn't want to let go of that money, then I wasn't making much. I was making like $2,000 a month as a financial advisor, really struggling. And I was afraid to take risks, and I was making slow decisions. And that's not a good combination in business. Rocky, before I keep going, anything to comment on those two so far?
No, I think you're right on the money with those two. I'm excited
Awesome.
to hear the other three.
Cool. So Cheap Chip is like every one of these has great characteristics, but like I said, like, that's the challenge. Like, if you notice that you don't have, even though you're a good saver, you don't have as much money or make, especially on the earning side, make as much money as you want to or should, it's because that scarcity minded part of Cheap Chip typically, and the slow decision making. So the next one is Overgenerous Olivia. Now, Overgenerous Olivia is represented by like a little doll, and she's wearing an oversized t-shirt because she just gives everything away. And she, overgenerous, very different than generous, but overgenerous in the sense that she's often putting others first at her expense. So as a financial advisor, when I was a financial advisor, I'd meet people, sit with people, potential clients, and you could tell, are these guys a spendthrift Sally? Are they cheap chip? Obviously, there's a combination. Overgenerous Olivias are the ones that are always thinking of everyone else, but typically don't have a lot of money because they're giving it away. And it's like, help everyone else, help other people, but then they don't take care of themselves. So oftentimes that means a friend asks for money, a relative asks for money, and they cannot say no. They just say yes, yes, yes. Oftentimes they're, really philanthropic, which is great. But sometimes, again, if you're overgenerous, if it's at your expense, because I'm a very generous person, but I'm very low as far as my overgenerous Olivia ranking goes, because everything I do is for contribution, but I don't see the value at all giving away my time for free most of the time, because people don't value it, right? Whereas overgenerous Olivia in business will oftentimes, she'll meet with people for free. She'll lower her price. She'll give stuff away because it's like the bleeding heart, gotta help everyone. And then she suffers, and people actually don't get as much help because of it, and sometimes end up taking advantage. And so sometimes she ends up getting a little bit resentful of all the people taking advantage of her when she's put herself in that position. Great thing about overgenerous Olivia, though, is once you recognize, just like all of these money types, once you recognize that this could be holding you back, and you could see that actually charging money or, doing things for people and making sure that they value it and not just giving everything away at your expense, when you recognize that you can do things for other people and get paid for your value or appreciated for the value, you could even be more generous, just not at your expense. And you could be like an Oprah. And actually in these videos, when you guys get the money type quiz, you'll see these 2-minute videos on each of the money types. And I also talk about, each of these money types and someone who could relate, who actually took it in a positive light and was able to use this in a way that was natural to them, but able to help the world. So for example, Spendthrift Sally used the example of Sir Richard Branson, right? He bought a freaking island, not afraid to spend money, right? He also probably has some cheap chip in him, I'm sure. Delusional Dan, which is up next. But he used it in a positive way. And usually the people who are very, very wealthy are taking these money types and using many of them in a very positive way, but not at their expense, to help others and to help the world. And a good example of a cheap chip would be Warren Buffett, right? Does not like to spend money. The guy still lives in his Omaha house, which is I think he paid $38,000 or $35,000 for it, something crazy like that. And a good example of an overgenerous Olivia would be someone like Oprah, who's given away $40+ million to help other people. So, you could use these, you can step into these and use these to help the world and to make more change. You just got to be aware of them. Okay. Number 4, we ready for the last 2?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. So the 4th one is Delusional Dan. So Delusional Dan is represented, you guys can picture this in your mind, represented by a Justin Bieber doll. Justin Bieber and a little doll who's about 2 inches tall, and maybe even shorter, that looks like a total dweeb. And I always say in my seminars, the Delusional Dan thinks he looks like this, and I showed Justin Bieber, but actually looks like this, and I showed the little dorky guy. So there's delusion there, right? And delusion about maybe how you see yourself. Maybe you see yourself as much more successful, much more wealthy than you actually are. And there's delusions in regards to, delusions of grandeur in regards to, I can do anything is possible, which I believe actually, and my second money type is Delusional Dan, which has served me very, very well in business. So again, you want to see how these money types serve you. They're always serving you, or you would not have them. You would not run these patterns, but also how they're holding you back. Okay. So Delusional Dan thinks big, anything is possible. I can do it. Great example of a Delusional Dan is someone like Tony Robbins, who I love. Tony Robbins, he is like, I can do anything. He made like $38,000 one year, and then the next year he made 1.1 million. But like, who would have thought that? Like, he bought a castle. He actually leased a castle, but he decided even when he was making $3,000 a month that he could spend $6,000 a month just on his rent, so that he can have this castle. And that, had a lot to do with the fact that he had a reason to make a lot more money. His girlfriend at the time was pregnant with his child, so that helped. But it's just amazing. But what happens with Delusional Dan oftentimes, the challenge is that Delusional Dan often lacks follow through. lacks follow through, oftentimes gets very distracted. It's like squirrel, the squirrel syndrome, the shiny penny syndrome, as I also call it. And those distractions can really hold you back from getting what you want, the lack of focus. In Tony Robbins' case, he was delusional in a sense. I mean, it's ridiculous to think you can go from $30,000 a year to making $1 million, but irrelevant because he followed through. And because he followed through, he had a plan. He took massive action, as he would call it. He reached his goals. So the way to combat delusional Dan is to stay focused, to follow through, and to take action. If you can do that, actually what I find I have a program called the Fem Mentorship, Female Empowered Moneymakers. It's a 6-month mentorship for female entrepreneurs. I find the women who do the best, the fastest, are oftentimes delusional Dan cheap chips. They're delusional enough that they think anything is possible. But if I can get them focused and teach them the shortcuts and get them committed enough to follow through with me, which is what happens in my program, then they will kill it. A great example of that is one of my clients, Lisa, who she was making negative $300 a month as a financial advisor when she came to me. She decided after one call with me to become a money coach instead because she wasn't really into doing the investments. She became a money coach, got really, really focused on her ideal client, followed my system, followed the steps, took action. And now in the last 10 months, hear me now, she's made over $100,000. So if she was just cheap chip and let's say over generous Olivia, it would be it's not that it doesn't happen because I have those people in my program as well, but it would be a lot more difficult because we need the big dreams, right, to pull us forward. You need to envision it to make it real. So delusional Dans have that, but you got to be careful. Sometimes you'll find delusional Dans in 5 different network marketing companies or 5 different businesses. And I had a show called The Financial G-Spot, and this woman, she literally had 5 different jobs, and she had given all her money. I mean, she was basically a delusional Dan over generous Olivia and had no money and given all away, was in debt, and had all these, she thought she could do anything, but wasn't following through, wasn't focused, and it really, really hurt her financially. So that's why you want to recognize these money types. And then the last one is Avoider Al, and represented by a doll who has kind of like a, not a mask, but he basically has like a bandana around his eyes. So he's blind. Okay. So it's kind of a silly representation, but he's blind, and oftentimes blind to his money, blind to problems. He will bury his head in the sand to avoid any pain, but really it's deep down in there, right? So avoider owls typically, they don't track their money. They don't want to look at their money. I had this avoider owl who I talk about in my first book called Mind Over Money Management. And she, when we looked at her money, which was extremely painful for her, I mean, because she was just burying her head in the sand. She did not want to look at it because it seemed like way, way too painful. She wanted to avoid any confrontation whatsoever. But I made her, I forced her to look at her money because I know the value of tracking your money. So we looked at her money, and she was negative $67,000 in debt. And she had gone through a ton of health challenges. So she had like $30,000 of medical debt. She had $33,000 of student loan. And then I guess the balance is about $4,000 of credit card debt. And don't quote me on these, but I'm pretty good at remembering numbers. It's in my first book. But anyway, she was negative $67,000 in debt. And then she was not making enough money. She had a business and she wasn't making enough money. And because of that, she couldn't pay her bills. And so she would just not pay them, not pay her credit cards, not pay this, not pay that, and then freak out. And then it would, of course, put her more in the hole. So avoiding it was a real challenge. And so we looked at it. And I remember this day looking at it where she was so anxious. And this comes with a lot. Avoider owls get a lot of anxiety. Cheap chips get a lot of anxiety. But she was looking at her money and very anxious. And I said, okay, let's look at every payment coming up when it's due. And one of those payments was a $250 credit card payment due the next day. And if she hadn't paid it, it would have been another fee, plus it could raise her rates and all that. And so she didn't have the money. It was for the next day. And so we had to figure out something. And literally, I mean, she was not too young, like 26, 27 years old, but I was like, let's get resourceful. At least pay the minimum so you don't have to pay that extra $25 or $35 fee to take care of this, because it's just going to put you further and further into debt. So anyway, long story short, she found a way. I think she even borrowed money from her parents. Like, she just had to suck it up, and actually they helped pay for health insurance. So she had money from her account to pay for that $250. I think she paid that amount. And she started to feel more empowered because she started to actually put attention on her money. And then I don't know, within a week, she was at her great aunt's house talking to her about how she, invested in herself, and she did this program with me, and she was getting excited for the first time about looking at her money and seeing how it could actually shift her life. Like, she felt like she can change things. And she mentioned how, like, she's trying to deal with this debt that she has for medical debt and student loan debt. And her great aunt said, well, how much do you owe for your student loans? And she didn't have total clarity, so she guessed, and she said, it's about $30,000. Her aunt takes out her checkbook and says, here you go, pay off your debt, your student loan debt. I got it taken care of. And I was like, wow, this would have been great if you knew that it was $33,000, not $30,000, but awesome. That's progress. So literally, like, she made so much progress. I mean, within a couple weeks or so, she had, and I don't know the exact time frame, but she went from negative 67,000 to like negative 36,000 or whatever it was. And that, even though that's still a negative number, she saw progress. And so avoider owls, the solution to your challenges is to stop avoiding, to pay attention, and to take action. And you can completely turn your financial situation around. So quick, I don't usually give an example of avoider owls in like money, because most of the people who are really wealthy don't avoid too much. I mean, even if you don't want to deal with something, you outsource and get other people to in business, because you can't just like not pay attention to your money, or things like, people stealing from you or whatever happened, which, has happened to Tony Robbins and things. Who did I miss? Delusional Dan and Delusional Dan. Oh, I gave that example. Tony Robbins. Cool. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, there you have it. That's a long-winded answer, but boom, you guys have the money types.
So once we know our money type, then comes, I guess, the harder question, and the harder thing is, how do we change our beliefs and behaviors and make sure that the new ones stick?
That's a great question. I struggled with that for a really long time. So a couple things. One, it sounds like we're at an AA meeting, but awareness. I mean, you have to become aware of like what your challenges are, becoming aware of your money types allows you to, this is why I use the dolls. It allows you to recognize these beliefs and behaviors without judging yourself in such a negative way. Because essentially I work with women, so especially women, we tend to judge ourselves and have self-doubt and beat ourselves up all the time, right? So if you can look at these beliefs and behaviors as like, oh, it's a doll, it's just hilarious, it's Spendthrift Sally, she looks like Barbie, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah, Spendthrift Sally has a tendency to do these things, and instead I'm gonna recognize that Spendthrift Sally is basically in charge right now, and instead I'm gonna bring in Cheap Chip. And it's kind of silly, but like, I literally did that. So I didn't have the names at the time, 8 to 10 years ago, but I recognized that I was being a cheap chip. And the way I recognized that and became aware was because I was actually teaching money parenting to parents. And I was like, the way what you believe and how you behave influences your kids. And I was dating this guy at the time, who now is my husband, who had a 2-year-old daughter, and I was hanging out with her a lot. And I thought, I don't want her to be looking at a menu, only deciding what to eat based on the price. Like, I didn't want to influence her in that way. I knew I was scarcity minded, and it wasn't helping, right? It wasn't serving me at the highest level. It wasn't serving me at the highest level. So becoming aware of that was huge. And then I recognized, I didn't know the names at the time, but I really stepped into Delusional Dan in order to grow my business. I had to take risk. I had to make fast decisions. I had to decide to invest when I didn't even have the money, and Cheap Chip had to go into debt. God forbid, it was horrible, but I had to go into debt in order to grow my business, which was a huge risk, but I did it because I knew that if I did that and I followed through, I had to follow through, then I would be able to be successful. And that's exactly how I was able to be successful. And, I talk about this when I do a lot of TV stuff, and I was talking about how I went from $500 a year in my coaching business, my money coaching business, to $500,000 a year 2 years later. And that was because I was conscious of the fact that I was running these patterns of being scarcity minded, being a cheap chip, which again, I could say, oh, I'm being a cheap chip now, and I don't have to judge myself anymore. And I'm going to step into Delusional Dan and just be silly about it without getting mad at myself. And taking that action and following through as a Delusional Dan actually helped me break through that $500,000 mark, right? So One is the first answer to your question is awareness. Is awareness, and just understanding like that you can be intentional about stepping into these money types to serve you. But if you are, running patterns like Spendthrift Sally, where you're spending all your money and you now know you're being a Spendthrift Sally and you feel depressed and you go to the store and you're about to buy something, maybe you just step into Cheap Chip for a minute because you realize that, you know what, you don't need that. And no, you don't have to justify that expense. Like actually maybe you just don't spend the money and jump into Cheap Chip and go save it instead and play that game for a while. So that's one thing. The second thing comes from a principle that I call the belief loan phenomenon. Belief loan phenomenon. This is in my new book called Make More Money, Help More People. I talk about this belief loan phenomenon. And if you imagine an infinity sign, right? Imagine an infinity sign, and on the left side, write down the word beliefs, top left, beliefs, and that curves around to the bottom right, and you'd write down the word behaviors, or at least imagine it in your head, and that curves around to the center, and you would write down success, and then that curves around back to beliefs, right? And if you drew arrows from beliefs to behaviors to success to beliefs to behavior, it goes in this infinity, right? Forever and ever and ever, it perpetuates itself. So what that represents is that means that your beliefs influence your behaviors, which influences your success. And that success or lack of success influences your beliefs again. So I use this example a lot in my sales seminars where I talk about how, like, if I believe I'm horrible at sales, I have that belief, right? That's going to affect my behavior. And the behavior could be a lack of behavior, a lack of action where I don't pick up the phone and make sales calls. I don't call people to ask for referrals. And it could be more apathetic, but I don't do much, right? The behavior is sitting there doing nothing, watching TV, distracting myself, something, but I'm not doing the appropriate action. And what happens if I believe I'm not good at sales or I'm horrible at sales, and then I don't take the action, I don't follow a sales system, or I don't learn a system, and I don't do that, then the result is that I don't make money. Maybe I go further in debt, right? Or I don't get new clients. Now, what happens when you believe I'm horrible at sales and then you don't get any clients? You start to believe, see, I told you I'm horrible at sales. Not only that, I really suck at this business thing. Not only that, I'm really bad at this. Like, so all these other negative beliefs start to come up as well because you're just looking for proof that this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work because you just want to find, you're like looking in the world to see how this is true, how to make this I'm horrible at sales statement true and everything else that kind of supports that. So that's what happens. And that's why, seminars like I know we've both gone to, Rocky, that Tony Robbins seminars are so awesome because you start to become aware, right? First step of what these beliefs are, these negative beliefs, and then you can shift them. Now, I love Tony Robbins. I was telling Rocky before the show that I've been a decade in the Tony Robbins world. The best thing that ever happened to me. I even met my husband there. However, I came home from those seminars because you asked this question, Rocky. You said, well, how do we make it stick? How do we make this belief stick? And my challenge was that even after I went to Tony Robbins seminar and stuck my finger up my nose and made a circle and went around his silly things that were so awesome, like great tools that he taught, I still came home. You guys are thinking, what is she talking about? That he does this exercise to help you get rid of these limiting beliefs where you literally stick your finger up your nose. It is hilarious. And it makes more sense when you're there, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant. But the challenge was, as much as I thought I was changing my beliefs and wanted to change my beliefs, I got home, sitting in front of my computer. I didn't feel like taking the action. I still felt like I was stupid or whatever my limiting belief was. And I still didn't do anything. Like sometimes I did, but oftentimes I didn't. I didn't take the massive action, even though I knew I was supposed to. So this belief loan phenomenon, where does this come in? Is that what I realized, I got the right mentor shortly after, maybe a year or two after I was in the Tony Robbins environment. And I was really feeling, my belief was that I'm stuck. My belief was that I can't do this. My belief was that, I don't know how. That was something a pattern that I ran. And I had this awesome coach, and actually he's still my coach today. His name's Jeff. We've been working together for 8 years. And Jeff said, Robyn, just be stuck. Just take the action anyway. And so I gave myself permission to be stuck, and I borrowed, here's the key to the belief loan phenomenon. I took a loan right from my coach, and I borrowed the belief from him that I can do this, and I can be stuck, and I can still take action. I borrowed the belief. And then he gave me the systems. He gave me the shortcuts. He gave me the processes to put into place for my business. And I followed it because I believed in him. And he believed in me. And I believed in him enough and knew he was getting other people results. And I believed that enough to borrow his belief, to take the action, that this action would work. And then I started to get clients and I started to change lives. And once I did that and I saw someone who paid a lot of money, it was a little at the time, but it got more and more as I raised my prices and people paid more, they paid more attention. I started to believe, oh my gosh, I am good at this. I'm changing lives. This is for the greater good. This is amazing. When people pay money, they actually get better results. And my belief started to shift. I borrowed the belief just long enough to take the action. I got a positive result, saw the change in other people's lives, and that compelled me to take more action and to believe that I can do this and that I didn't feel stuck anymore. I didn't even think about being stuck anymore. I thought about how it was changing lives, and I had new positive beliefs that replaced those negative beliefs. And then it just kept perpetuating itself. And that's one of the key principles I teach with my femmes and my mentorship today that gives them such a huge shortcut, because instead of trying to shift your beliefs, which is absolutely true, you need to shift your beliefs, but the shortcut is that you can borrow the beliefs for the time being, take the action long enough to get the result, and then you can start adopting your own beliefs without having to shift them as much by like force.
And that's one of the things that I talk about is take action. Even if you're taking small steps and you have small success, it compounds over time and it just keeps growing. In the same way you can spiral down negatively, you can spiral up positively.
Yeah. And
so create some success, even if it's little success, and then continue to build on it. And eventually it explodes and it takes you pretty far. I get a question a lot. I know you were talking about coaches. People ask me, how do you find a good coach? How do you know that they're good?
Yeah. And good, I think, is relative. I think the right coach for you is the most important. I mean, good is like, I don't know, the right coach and a good coach. I have a mentor test. I call it the mentor test. I actually have a few different tests like this, but I was talking about this when I was on NBC the other day, and I couldn't shut up enough about a mentor. I was like, a mentor. But it's true. You need a mentor, and you need the right mentor, and you need a good mentor. So the test is this. Number one, the mentor must be getting the results that you want himself or herself. So if you want to make more money, and I don't know, let's say you want to make, $100,000 a year, and you're only making 50, or you want to make $500,000 a year and you're only making 100, doesn't matter. You better find someone who's done that. And not only just like is making money, but actually went from not making money to making money. The more accurate it is, the similar it is, the better. So one is that they've gotten the result that you want. If you want to just build wealth, let's say you already have money, but you're not good at keeping it. Or let's say, you have a ton of money, but you're good at keeping it, but you're not good at, creating passive income. So you want to get a mentor who's created passive income, not a mentor who's just going to hold you accountable and tell you good luck. Like, oh yeah, you go figure it out, because you need the shortcuts. So number one, you want to get a mentor who's gotten the results that you want to create. Number two, you want a mentor who's gotten other people like you with similar problems, results that you want. Okay. Because you can find millions of people out there who've gotten the result, but they don't know how to teach you how to do it. They're just getting the result, but they're not good at training people to do it. There's so many people out there who have all these programs and, I hate to be cynical, but there's a lot of information out there that you can get. And these people might be very wealthy. Maybe they made it really big in real estate, but then everyone in their program, like no one seems to be able to make money. Like that's not a good sign. So you need to make sure they're making money themselves, or whatever it is, that whatever result you want to create. If you want to have, total health and feel energized every day, you got to find someone who has that result. And then you got to find someone who's gotten other people like you similar result. So that's the mentor test. And if they don't pass both of those, that wouldn't be a good mentor. It wouldn't be the right mentor. Yeah. And I'll even tell you the transition of it and why I even went into it and why it was so important to me. But so what happened was I became a financial advisor, and even that I found that there was a challenge. I had a challenge with it because, as I mentioned with the parents, like I noticed that really what was impacting their life and the lives of their children were their beliefs and behaviors, was more their mindset than the mechanic they did, for example, but it was more about their mindset. What I realized, I created this program called Kim Gym, which is Know Your Money to Grow Your Money, because I found that the more people had clarity of their money, the more wealthy they were. And that's why I'm like a big preacher of knowing your money and having that clarity. But anyway, so as I was working with these parents, we would look at their cash flow, and I have something called the money mask, how much you make, spend, and keep. So one of the things that we tracked to know your money was your cash flow. How much is coming in? How much do you make? How much do you spend every month? And then how much do you keep at the end of the month? And when you track those numbers, you have more clarity, and then you can make better choices. Now, when I was doing money coaching, it was pretty awesome because I could help them be really clear about what their spending was. And I shifted their mindset and helped them shift their mindset to a point where they made conscious choices, right? Most of you probably feel, and not all of you, but especially the cheap chips out there, but many of you might feel like you're just defaulting, right? You have these bills and there's just money, like you make good money, but it just seems to disappear somehow. And like, you don't know why, because you don't seem to have control over it, right? So when I got into money coaching, I started to give people the real feeling of choice. Because when you have that clarity, you make conscious choices and you can spend less money because everything becomes a choice. And that was really cool because I could save people thousands of dollars a month. They could be more likely to reach their goals. I was living in the Silicon Valley in California. So like people were making good money. They just usually were spending all of it. And so that was extremely valuable. The challenge then became like, what if I get someone even making $10,000 a month, let's say, but then their mortgage, they already made these choices that affected them that were now all these bills. Let's say they were spending $11,000. Well, I could get them to shift that to maybe spend $10,000 and save nothing, or get even really good to spend $9,000 and save $1,000. Let me do the math right. But that only will change their lives so much. So I recognize that if I could help them make more money, now we're playing a fun game, because there's only so much they could save, because, what are they going to do? Move to a third world country and completely change their lives? I know 10,000 is a lot for most people, but I'm just saying there's only so much you could do when you can just save. And then I started getting into business coaching because I recognized like, oh my gosh, if they made 10 grand, I can help them make 20 and they still only spend 9 or 10. Now we can really get wealthy fast. That's how I got into the idea of like doing more business coaching to help people make money. And I got good at sales because I was, I had my coach. And so I started teaching it. So anyway, I got into that, and then I just was attracting a lot of women. And because I had such challenges myself, oftentimes when you get into business, your best ideal client is someone who had challenges like you had. If you can, like I said, get a mentor who's overcome the challenges that you've had and has the results that you want. So because I overcame those challenges, and I'm a woman, and I got really good at teaching it and training, and I recognize especially this belief loan phenomenon thing for women, that even more so than men, it really impacts them. Then they lack confidence, or we, I should say, have self-doubt, we oftentimes get stuck. All those things that I experienced, I noticed that I can shift that with the belief loan phenomenon and shift that with the different strategies that I use. And I got so obsessed with helping these women. I really launched this program, my Fem Mentorship, last February. So it's only been like just over a year and a half. Now I've had 60 women in the program. There's only 14 that are allowed in each program. It's a really small, tight community. And one of the things I talk about actually are the 3 keys to success. And one of them is one that we covered. One is that you must have a mentor. 2, you must have a community, and it has to be the same type of test. It has to be the right community. You want to be with a community who has similar problems that you have and have gotten similar results or want similar results. They have to be totally committed to their success. And then the commitment that you have to have is that you're willing to step outside your comfort zone and do whatever it takes to be successful. And that's what I have. That's what I've set up with my mentorship. So now I'm totally in love with my femmes. I'm so excited. I love doing this, but I've helped women like Lisa, who I mentioned, and I have a client. Sometimes they come in making a lot of money. I had one client, Denise, is making $2 million a year within 7 months. She did a video that I helped her do, and it was a 1-minute video that attracted a merger acquisition into her business. She sold her business for $6 million, still works there and runs it, but now she's a part owner of a much bigger company, and it was super awesome. So sometimes they come in, not making a lot of money and shift that. Sometimes they make a lot of money and shift that. but I love it. And I love the women I work with. And one thing I will say about whatever you do is ideal business, ideal life, or if you're not in business, like whatever it is you do, ideal career, ideal life. You are so busy with what you do to make money every day that you better love it, love what you do, and love the people you work with. I pride myself on that because I absolutely love my femmes and love these ladies. And it's true transformation when you get to work with the people you love and help them shift their lives. So that's what I do now. I love it to death. It's amazing.
It comes through loud and clear. And people should, I mean, you're clear, you know your purpose, you know what you want, and you go out and you do it. And I think a lot of people have not been intentional. And so they're stuck in a situation and they're stuck in a box, and someone needs to come along and break the box and say, no, there's a whole nother world out there. And that's what Tony literally does. I think his Unleash the Power Within is all about breaking the box and saying, there's a whole wide world out there. Don't limit yourself.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing I got from Tony Robbins, and I'm so grateful for it every single day, is that when I first went to his Unleash the Power Within event, which is his first event, it was like the first time in my life that I really, really believed that I control my life, that I actually create my own destiny. Like I didn't get that message. Like in my whole life, I never got that message. And I knew that it had something to do with it, but I always thought things were happening to me, not things were happening for me. I had a tendency to make excuses and blame the outside world. And then, I mean, the biggest thing I got was that like this empowerment of I control my life, good and bad, that holy crap, like everything that I have is because of what I've done. Everything that I don't have is because of what I've done. One of the things I say all the time in my book, in my seminars, wherever, is that everything you want that you don't already have lies outside your comfort zone. Otherwise, you'd already have it. I mean, I learned that along the way, Tony Robbins, that like, wow, I can have everything I want, but I got to be willing to step outside my comfort zone. And some of you might be listening going like, living this life that you're looking at yourself. This is what happened to me when I first went to Tony Robbins. I looked at myself and I went, who am I? Who is this? Like, what life am I living? Like, whose life? It's not mine. This is not the life that I expected. And I was negative and I was making excuses and I was complaining. And I'm like, that's not who I am. That's not me. And then I had this surge of like, wow, I control my life. And I started to change things. I had to step outside my comfort zone to do it, but I completely started to change things. Another quote I'll just give you because it's so powerful is that I saw this. Actually, this was at another Tony event that this guy named Keith Cunningham was speaking. He put this on the board. This is the guy he's the rich dad of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Not the guy that wrote it, but he's the guy that worked with Robert Kiyosaki. He's amazing. Love this man, Keith Cunningham. But anyway, he didn't write this, but he put this on the screen. It was something like this. It said, hell on earth is meeting the person you could have become. Hell on earth is meeting the person you could have become. And I was in this stage in my life, like where, like, I mean, I knew at that stage, like I control my life, but I was still like, I wasn't living it. I wasn't living up to my potential. I had so much more to give, and I was not making money. I was in a lot of debt. I was playing small, and I really saw this image of myself. It's kind of weird because I don't even usually have visions, but I like envisioned myself on this cloud looking at this other woman, and this woman like, sitting across from me was extremely successful. She was making a huge impact. She had all the money that she wanted. Money just wasn't an issue. She was totally in abundance. She was totally positive. She was healthy. She was just like completely changing the world. And I was like, that's me. And if I don't end up becoming that woman, like I will not live. Like I just can't. I can't. And that completely drove me and compelled me to do what I do today. And I'm so proud to say, like, of course, there's always another level. But like, I don't look across and see someone else there. I see I'm me. That's who I am. That's who I am now. And I'm always striving to become better. But that's because like, I know I control my life. I know I can create this. And I guess I'm getting a little cheesy at the end here, but all of you who have listened this far, and this is a long podcast for you to listen to, so I'm impressed by you. This means it's really important for you to have everything you want, is just to remember that you get to have everything you want. And it really is just a matter of making that decision and deciding and then taking the action. And don't settle. Please don't settle. If you're in a job that you hate, get out. You can create money from anything. You don't have to have resources. You have to be resourceful. And that's another thing I got from Tony Robbins. So it's just, I mean, many mentors. Like, it's just so important to have mentors and have that positive voices in your life every day, because it really impacts the way you live.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think part of it is the way the school systems are designed. You grow up and you're like put on a track. You go to school. Once you graduate school, you go to college. What are you good at? I'm good at math, or I'm good at this. Well, then you should go do this. And you're kind of pushed down a track, but nobody actually sits down and has the conversation of, I want to be intentional with my life. What do I really want to do? What should I do? And unfortunately, that's where we end up with, until something shakes it up and makes you make that change. Or you're lucky enough to have those attitudes and beliefs up front, and you don't follow the system and you decide to take your own course anyway.
Absolutely.
So, Robyn, if people want to connect with you, find you, and learn more about your programs, what's the best way for them to do that?
So first, let me give you the money type quiz to make sure you get that. So you've waited this long to the end of the podcast. You deserve it. We've reeled you in here. No, I just didn't want to forget. So go to robyncrane.com, ROBYNCRANE.com/money type quiz. And then you'll get the money type quiz. It'll take you right to it. You can take it right online there, and it'll spit out your scores for all 5, and then you can look at the videos and watch you can watch them all, but definitely the top 2 are going to be the most relevant to the way your life is and how you might be sabotaging your success or not. So check that out. And obviously robyncrane.com, you can go there as well. For those of you, women who are listening and you're a female entrepreneur and you want to grow your business, I really help service-based female entrepreneurs, especially if you're already established and you're making money. Are you willing to invest in yourself? I mean, sometimes I have people come in and they're just starting, but you got to be willing to invest in yourself. And I don't mean just money. I mean time and effort and being willing to step outside your comfort zone. If I get women like that, they can just kill it really, really fast. It's just amazing. And then, because you deserve to do what you want to do. And if you want to have a conversation with me, you can go to robyncrane.com, and then you can click on the work with me page, and there's a drop down there for FEM. Or you can go to robyncrane.com/FEM, FEMM, and you can set up a call with me. But that's, if you're a woman entrepreneur, that's really for you. And otherwise, just get a bunch of my free stuff. You can get my book, Mind Over Money Management, if you need more help with the personal finances. I have a few other books for business, but my newest one is called Make More Money, Help More People. They're all #1 bestsellers. So enjoy it. Get the goods.
Thank you for sharing that. And I encourage people to check out her site. I did go look at it, and there are a ton of awesome free resources that are there. So it doesn't even cost you any money. And if you do fit her profile and you're a female entrepreneur who wants to take the next step, it's something to check out. I'm going to ask one final question. How do you help people get out of their comfort zone?
Well, part of that is it's a decision, but part of that is the belief loan phenomenon. And the reason it works so well in my program is because it's not just these women who are taking my word for it. I mean, I'm very vulnerable with them. I tell them all these stories and craziness that, I've gone through. And so, and what I had to do to step outside my comfort zone in order to be successful. So I'm constantly building those beliefs so that they will take action. But a huge part of it is really to see other women who have succeeded in my program, who were either not making a lot of money or struggling in some way, and really turn their life around, and that they've taken action. So I talk about, this is in my book, Make More Money, Help More People. I talk about this rubber band around, if you imagine a rubber band around your waist, and if you were in the corner of a room in my office right now, and I grabbed that rubber band and pulled it all the way across the room and then let go, you're going to be scared that it's going to, or even before I let go, actually the anticipation is worse. You're going to be freaking out, scared I'm going to let go of that by accident or maybe on purpose. And to snap that, and it's gonna hurt, right? If I reach this rubber band, huge rubber band around your waist all the way across the room, that would snap you really, really hard. And trust me, I'm pregnant right now. I would not want to have that rubber band around my waist snapping me and my belly and my baby. But if instead I go across the room to that corner and I start talking to you, and we're only a few inches away, maybe 6 inches, and I start to stretch it, and we have a conversation. I'm stretching the rubber band. And then after about 20, 30 minutes, I take a small step back and I stretch the rubber band. And then after 20, 30 minutes, I take a small step back. And before you know it, I'm in the middle of the room and that rubber band is no longer taut, right? That rubber band is very, very loose. It's either going to break and just not hurt, right? Or even if I did let go, it wouldn't even ever get to your stomach because we've stretched it. So I tell my ladies, be stretchy. Okay, you don't have to go from 0 to 100. But you do need to constantly, like daily, maybe hourly, and it depends what you want. And it depends how far it is outside your comfort zone, how stretchy you need to be and how much you need to stretch. But you do need to stretch, and partly you can borrow the belief using the belief loan phenomenon, partly be in a community where you see other women or other people like you getting similar results who've had similar problems. Make sure you have a mentor who's giving you the shortcuts, who's going to help build the belief, and also who's getting other people results, right? And all that helps you be willing to stretch and stretch outside your comfort zone. And it completely has to be you willing to do whatever it takes, because I'll tell you, there's some people in my program who want something and it might be like way on the other side of their comfort zone, like in another, if we're looking at it as rooms or in a house, and I'm in a 4,000 square foot house, like on the other side of the house, like it might be for some person, right, way over there, where it might be for Rocky and for me at this stage, because we've stretched so much, it might be right next to me, like in the same room, right? So that doesn't mean that, like, if you want to have something big and it's way outside your comfort zone, you might have to stretch more than someone else. So the key is to be willing, and you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. Get your mentor, get your community, have people around you who are getting similar results, because trust me, especially women, but men too, if you don't have that support and you take action and then it doesn't get you what you want, you're going to want to quit. You're going to want to give up. And if you're not there with someone who's stretching that rubber band with you to make sure that you can get outside your comfort zone, then it's going to be very, very hard to sustain that activity. So that's how you stretch: mentor, community, commitment, and seriously, like, consistently taking action, and a willingness to do whatever it takes. And one more thing to add onto that is that, and this is, again, like, bringing up Tony Robbins since we have this in common, and also because he's influenced my life dramatically, but is that, like, human beings will do so much more to avoid pain than to seek pleasure. So we need to get leverage. Tony talks about this a lot. And if you don't know Tony Robbins, I definitely pick up one of his books. It's amazing. But if you aren't stepping outside your comfort zone, the only reason is because you associate more pain, right? More pain to doing whatever is outside your comfort zone than staying where you are. So if instead you start to associate pain to being where you are, settled, mediocre, unhappy, average, if you start to really, like, get your head out of the sand and see that as painful, more painful than even maybe it feels like, because maybe you're avoiding it, you will be willing to take the action that seems painful, because you can associate less pain to those things, and you can associate more pleasure to it. So hope that makes sense for you. But those are really, like, quite a few keys to really stepping outside your comfort zone, because that's everything. Like, everything you want that you do not already have lies outside your comfort zone. Otherwise, you'd already have it. Just got to say it one more time.
Absolutely. And I think you've shared a lot of valuable lessons here with the audience today, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Rocky.
I encourage you to check out Robyn's site and the many free resources that she has there. It's robyncrane.com, and it's in the show notes. Robyn clearly laid out a path of how to get the success you want and how to find people to help you create the life you want to live. So today's call to action is, what small step can you make this week to improve your life? Where are you willing to step outside your comfort zone? What's preventing you from moving forward? And who are you putting on your team to help build the life you deserve? You've got to take massive action, but massive action starts with one small step. And that's the goal for this week. What's that one small step you can take to create the life you desire? By the way, if there's someone you know who could benefit from what we've talked about, please share it. It helps you to build social capital, create better relationships, and start better conversations. It may also help you to find people who can help you to move forward, and you can create your own groups. The reality is, too often in life, we have so many competing priorities. We need to find a better way to keep them in harmony. Many times work jumps on us, or our family pulls us, or our finances go south. Having someone to help you look over all those pieces and find balance is the job of a conductor. If you want to climb Mount Everest, you'll need a few Sherpas, guides who show you the way and can help you get to the top. In both of these roles, it's you who has to do the work. I'm just here to guide, teach, and show you a path. Thanks for listening. If you want to get a hold of me, it's rocky@richersoul.com. I'd love to hear from you. Have an abundant week and go make that one small step.